So here we are on day 2. What is today? Today is the 29th of March. So almost the end of the quarter. And I get the opportunity to sit with you. And this is really the first time we met face-to-face was today, right?
Correct. Today, yeah.
Do you, why don't you do me a favor? Why don't you introduce yourself? And then we'll start at the beginning, like how we first connected. Yeah. So go for it. What's your name, rank, serial number, all that stuff?
So yeah, my name's Alan Roche. I live in the Chicago area, and I work for HDR, and I'm leading our data center commissioning team for all of North America. Oh, okay. For all of North America. So looking to reach into Canada, and I even talked about trying to get down to Mexico at some point and figure out how that works. So our company does commissioning globally, all over Europe, and even Australia and Singapore. And so now. It only makes sense that we're doing business with all these U.S.-based companies to then establish ourselves in North America. And so I was brought in to do that about 7 or 8 months ago.
No kidding.
To do that. So it's a little daunting, but but at the same time, it's super exciting. It's a really good opportunity, and I think it exemplifies what you talked about today at the conference. Of there is a massive need for people. Good people that are driven to do work and get in this industry, that somebody like me within 3 years of being in this industry elevated it to this position.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I definitely want to understand how you got there, but we're going to start maybe from the beginning, because you had a really stupid job before this, right? What did you do?
So yeah, prior to this, I was a submarine officer.
The worst. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Salute.
Auga.
Thanks for being here, by the way, Alan.
So this is awesome. So yeah, I was a submarine officer, and I got out of the Navy while I was in Norfolk, Virginia, and decided to stick around there because we're having our third daughter. So went to work for Oceaneering, a company that does work on submarines and aircraft carriers. So easy transition, right? And working on submarines and working in the shipyards and managing projects, and I was an engineer on a submarine, spent a lot of time in meetings, and I'd see the guy.
Real quick, though, so that people don't know what that means. You were an engineer on a fast attack submarine, which means you are the biggest nerd on that submarine.
Absolutely the biggest nerd.
Like, doesn't even probably know how to talk to a female.
And has no idea what's going on in real life either, because I'm on the boat 18 hours a day, no cell phone, cell phone reception, no.
Probably the worst job on the ship as an officer. Would you agree?
100%. And you get spot promoted to 04, right? You get more money. I've never met anybody said that the extra money is worth it. And I knew that going into, and then I had to prove it for myself that it wasn't worth it.
All right, so listen, we're going to start. Let's take it back to the very beginning too, because I am obviously genuinely fascinated with your background, your story, and I had the chance to work for amazing people on the boat I was on. But how did we get connected, and how long ago was that? Because I know it was just random, and then we're gonna dive back because I think you have a hybrid background in the Navy as well, right?
Yeah. So let's back it up to my previous firm.
Well, how about this? Back it up to, where were you born and raised?
Yeah. So born and raised Blue Island, Illinois. So all my family's from the south side of Chicago. We're mostly Sox fans. So I'm a big White Sox fan. Got season tickets for this year. I'm pretty excited. I was a little nervous about the baseball strike this year.
This podcast is over. Yep. So, no, kidding. Go ahead. I'm not a Cubby fan. Go.
Sorry. I'm a baseball fan. Best tickets I've ever had was at Cubs games. Growing up, my uncle worked at the Levy restaurant in the Stadium Club. We'd do Mother's Day brunch at Wrigley Field. And
how cool is that baseball field, though?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, I love going there. We used to sit. My dad's boss had season tickets, and we would go. And we'd sit first row behind the Cubs on deck circle. I could reach out and touch Sammy Sosa if I wanted.
That's ridiculous.
And I'm sitting there, 10 years old, wearing my Sox hat. People give me crap, but I didn't care. I'm a Sox fan.
Good for you.
But I'm a baseball fan. I'll go to a baseball game anywhere.
All right, so you were a baseball fan, had poor judgment in baseball teams, it sounds like, but were smart. And then you went to, were you an athlete?
Yeah, played baseball, wrestling, football.
What weight did you wrestle?
Senior year, wrestled 162.
Chunky monkey, huh?
I was 125 freshman up to 162.
Yeah, there you go. All right, now we're speaking my language.
I had a good time. Mark Rudiger was my wrestling coach. His brother is Rudy.
No kidding.
So
did you get to meet Rudy? I guess
every year. He's got 3 other brothers that were high school wrestling coaches.
Oh, wow!
And we'd have a Rooter Cup every year, and so
That's really cool.
so it was really cool, like good, cool, like a family tournament type thing, and Rudy would be there. So
cool.
I only saw him there once, so because it was just like a varsity thing, so I really participated at like my junior senior year.
Super inspiring story, though. I mean,
it was incredible. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, like just there's a ton of wrestling history in that area. And
amazing wrestling in that state, though.
Yeah.
There's Texas last year in high school shipped down a couple of kids from private school because I don't know if you guys were able to compete due to COVID. And those guys came down to Texas and
oh, that's awesome.
Plowed through a bunch of people, and thank God went back to Illinois. So, but okay, so you wrestled in high school, and then from high school, then what?
So 12 days after high school ended, I left for boot camp. I said, I'd signed up before my senior year. Ooh. So I depped in, full in, everything. I said,
why?
I was always intrigued by it. So I'm an Eagle Scout. I was a Boy Scout. You sort of really back things up, leadership and where that comes from. One of the best decisions my parents ever made for us is we were graduating Cub Scouts, moving into Boy Scouts, and the existing Boy Scout troop that was there wasn't very good. But there was like 10 of us that were going. So they said, well, we got enough people. Let's just start our own troop. So there was never anybody senior to me, right? It was, you're the junior guy, you're brand new, but you got to immediately mentor each other. And 8 out, I think 10 of us went on to become Eagle Scouts. And so we never had anybody really other than the adults getting us along there. So I was a leader from the start. Right. So awesome. Immediately thrown into that position, you're thrown into leadership positions within the Scouts. And I just think that is a huge reason that molded my leadership from a very early age.
So why did you pick Navy versus there's leadership opportunities in every branch?
I wanted the hardest thing. Right.
Well, you got it.
Right. So what is the toughest thing? What's the hardest thing to get into? There was the educational benefits from being from the state of Illinois, looking to just do a few years, get out, go get free school.
Sure.
That was the initial goal. And then, like I said, I got in, but then I was enlisted and I looked around. I said, I like this, but I think I need more. Right. I need to be
What did you do? What was your NEC?
So I was a nuke mechanic.
Okay.
I got picked up for my officer program. I was going to be an ELT. I got picked up to go to ELT school, but never actually went to ELT school because at the timing, I just got picked up for the officer program.
And so that was pretty quick then. You must have had pretty decent high school grades or something? Or?
Yeah, no, I had good grades, top 10%. Went to a huge high school, graduated with about 1,000 people.
When you go to a school like that and you are in the top 10% and you've enlisted in the Navy before you even started your senior year, did you just not see a path to college, or you were just like, I need something different?
I didn't know how. Like, I love my parents, but they didn't know how. They didn't know how to
They just didn't
me.
know.
They didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't have anybody in my family that went to college that said, this is how you go to college. This is how you do it. This is how you get a scholarship. This is how you do this stuff. And so I've always figured things out my own way. My mom likes to tell a story is kindergarten. And I woke her up one day, like I'm backpack on. I made my own breakfast and I said, Mom, bus is here. I'm leaving. And she woke up like, oh my gosh.
How cool is that?
She felt so bad. But then it was like, no, Mom, I got this. I'm good. Right?
I wish I could do that to all my kids. That'd be amazing.
So that's kind of been my whole life. I've always been that way. Is I'm gonna do it my way, and I'm gonna figure it out on my own. I've gotten everything I have in this life with a lot of help, but ultimately, it's no one's gonna help me more than me, and so I got to figure it out on my own. So.
I like that story. So you're graduating high school. 12 days later, you're going to school to be a nuke machinist mate, and then you were supposed to become an ELT, but you got picked up before that part. So
get picked up when I was in prototype up in Ballston Spa, New York, and so I spent about 3 months waiting to go to college, sitting around Ballston Spa, New York, and then went to U of I, starting in the so I had to start in the summer school. So it was weird starting college in summer, trying to find a place to live when there's kids still like getting ready to take their finals, and so that was interesting. So it was me and 3 other guys that all got picked up the same program. We all lived together. So
were they enlisted as well?
All the same program. So one was an electrical engineer, one was a physics, and then 2 of us were mechanical engineers. So me and one of my roommates were both mechanical engineers. So we took every class, but I think 2 together.
So what program was it like?
It was NECP, Nuclear Enlisted Commissioning Program.
Gotcha.
And then it eventually turned to State 21.
Okay.
So same thing. They just repackaged the program differently over the years.
And then was there like you lose a bet? Why did you go to where you went? Or
U of I?
I'm kidding. It's a great school, obviously. Huge brains coming from that school. But why there? You want to be back home versus?
Close. It was just under 2 hours away from home.
Gotcha.
And it's a good engineering school. I mean, from
fantastic.
Mechanical engineering, it was outstanding.
One of my best department heads went to school there, and there's a lot of guys in this industry, obviously.
And I don't think I appreciate it till later in life that how much weight that carries, say, a mechanical engineering degree from U of I, not just some other school. So, definitely learned to appreciate it over time. And the fact that I did it in 3 years. I graduated. So I did 2 years in the Navy, went to college, got my degree in 3 years. There were guys I went to high school with that graduated the same time as me because they took 5 years, but they did an internship and studied abroad or did other things. But I still did it in 3, and to me, that was probably like my most, because it wasn't easy. And then to do it in 3 years and to still get a 3.0 GPA, was tough.
And then when you graduate, did they make you guys, being former enlisted, you probably didn't have to go to another, you had probably go to like an OTS school.
I was supposed to go to OCS, but then we were able to work something out and do everything through the ROTC unit, so I got commissioned there. So that's
where they teach you which fork to use and all that stuff?
Exactly, knife and fork school.
I got you.
And I didn't have to go do that. I was able to get commissioned through the ROTC unit, and it was a good deal for us.
And then what?
Then off I went to go through the pipeline again as an officer. So went through the pipeline, did my first submarine out of Groton, Connecticut.
Did you pick that boat?
You get to pick your priorities. What do you want, right? Is it location? Is it operational? My number one priority was I wanted an operational boat.
Okay, so you didn't care what you were doing. You just wanted a boat that was already going to sea.
I wanted a fast-tack operation. Didn't want to be in a shipyard. I didn't want to be in a boomer. I didn't care if I was in Hawaii or Connecticut or Virginia.
So you didn't even
I just wanted something operational.
I got you. And what was the boat again?
The Alexandria.
Definitely saw that boat in Groton when I was there. How long? When were you in, by the way?
Yeah, that was 2006 is when I showed up to that boat. So 2004, I got commissioned, went through the pipeline. 2006, showed up to the Alexandria, and then I named my third daughter Alexandria.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Is that where you got your fish at, I guess? Is that why?
Yeah.
That's a cool thing. So what was the Alexandria doing back in those days? Were they just doing med runs? Were they doing counter drug interdictions?
Yeah, Persian Gulf area and back. So I did 2 deployments. I did an ISEX.
So you have the blue nose? Did you get the blue nose?
Yeah. Right. And so I showed up there right at the right time. I showed up in January, and I spent the next 10 out of 12 months at sea.
That's awesome.
I lived in a house, and I couldn't remember how to, get home sometimes because I'd only lived there for a couple weeks out of that, for the first year that I lived there. So it was super high op tempo. Did a lot of really cool stuff in deployment. Had amazing leaders, and I still keep in touch with so many of those guys from that boat. In between the two,
that's an I class. What was the hull? What's
757?
Yeah, so that's an advanced boat.
Yeah, right. It was an I boat, and we had a lot of new technology put on the boat, new periscopes, infrared, and all sorts of stuff. It was, So the first deployment went to the Persian Gulf, came back, and then our second deployment, I was the senior JO. Same thing, Persian Gulf. So we knew the area. We knew we were very familiar with. So being the senior JO it was super advantage over some of the other people that were on board.
So to those that are listening that hadn't served, so the senior junior officer. So that means you're maybe a division head.
Officer.
Okay.
And basically, I ran the communications department, so all the radio men and helping.
Probably a cool job.
It was, I reported directly to the captain basically because the navigator was also the operations officer, but he was busy being the navigator. So it really became more, I was like the assistant operations officer as well in conjunction with some of the other guys that were on board. So we had a really good group of guys and then that whole experience too, in between we got to do an ISEX. So I went up under the ice and did all that.
You punched through?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty awesome.
We surfaced 9 times. I got to be in a movie.
Oh, really? Which one?
So this sci-fi show called Stargate. You ever heard of it? So it's with Richard E. Anderson, MacGyver.
Okay.
And so I was a pretty big fan of the show, and I'd get made fun of, oh, you're a nerd for watching the show, whatever. And then I find out that, I was a big fan of MacGyver as a kid, right? Grew up in the 80s. Sure. And then got to find out that we're going to shoot scenes for a movie. Well, I got to be in a scene with MacGyver, right? So it's just me and him. I'm like this guard outside the wardroom. And so there's this scene, he comes out, and I just say, he barks some stuff at me, and I say, yes, sir, and move on. And that scene took it's such a small scene, but it took like eight tries for him to get it right. I just had to stand there and say, yes, sir. And then, I'm standing there just outside the wardroom, and all the other guys are standing like 4 feet down trying to get us to crack up and laugh and whatever. So I've seen some ISEX photos recently that made me think about that. And actually, I posted it on Facebook the other day, some screen grabs of the movie, and tagged a bunch of guys that were on the boat. And so, we've recently been reminiscing about.
Which boat was that again?
The Alexandria.
Okay,
that was 2007.
One. That's pretty awesome.
So that was awesome. That was one of the neatest experiences, not only just getting up on the ice and doing everything we did, but our submarine was filmed surfacing through the ice and then submerging, and then I got to be in the movie. It was pretty cool.
So did MacGyver ever go to sea with you guys?
No, they weren't at sea, but like we were literally just surfaced through the ice, sitting there. We got to have lunch with them and hang out with them in the wardroom, and it was really neat.
Was he cool?
Fun. Oh yeah, super cool. So funny story is when we're taking pictures and we're giving them hats and taking pictures, right? And we give them this hat, and submarines, you got that little leather band, right? Because you can't have plastic because it could melt. So he's got that clasp. He's trying to adjust the hat, and he's fiddling around with it, can't figure it out, and it's like silent, and we're all like thinking it, and he says it, he goes, MacGyver, huh? Yeah, right.
So he even knew.
So he even acknowledged
he's like, look,
that.
it's just a role, it's just an act.
So that was the highlight definitely of that experience.
When you were on that, you did 2 tours, it sounds like, which is, I mean, I love being on a submarine.
It's somewhat rare, but to do 2 deployments in a 3-year span was high up tempo.
Is that you must have had a really good skipper then that had a lot of confidence by the
2 great skippers, absolutely. And
that's awesome. That's a testament to those guys, right? So the thing is, at that time, were you like, you're the bull JO or whatever they call it, right? But were you thinking, hey man, I could do this forever? I could do this I'm going to do 20 years? Or were you like, I was only coming in the military to get my college paid for. Yeah. And they did that. Now I'm on bonus time. I mean,
I absolutely. I saw myself. I could become a CO someday. Absolutely, okay. Right.
Was that the goal?
So that was the goal. I was going to do everything I could, but also leave in and out, right? Like I didn't have to because of my prior enlisted time and everything else. So, and that kind of started to change a lot when I did my department head tour, where things were a little bit more rough. It was a little more challenging, and then thinking about my future and getting married and having kids, because I didn't have any kids at the time. So,
were you married at the time?
I was married at the time, and and then got subsequently divorced when I went to shore duty after my first boat. That just didn't work out.
Very typical on subs. So
it was, but we had our own issues. I wouldn't say it had much to do with the Navy, though. Well,
a lot of people just I saw it a lot.
It's
right?
a challenge.
Like there was a sonar tech that I served with who was a chief, and he had been in the Navy for like 17 years, and he re-enlisted for 3 more to get to his 20. And I said, does that mean you'll spend your last 3 years on shore duty? And he's like, no. He's like, I've combined in my life spent less than 1 year on shore duty.
I've met guys like that. Yeah.
And I'm like, did you get in trouble? I mean, what happened? He goes, well, my wife and I love each other and we have the greatest relationship. It just really only works if I'm gone like 250 days out of the year. And I was like, I remember thinking, I'm like, that's a horrible thing. And then I was like, now that I'm married, I'm like, I totally get it. So I'm like, I got to go into deployment. So no. But I saw that, people come back and they weren't used to the routines and it changed everything.
I mean, it's tough to adjust and learn. I mean, it's I leave for a week and I come home and my wife and I got to relearn each other. She's like, no, you don't understand. Like, because we got kids now and the kids change and what they want or what they expect. And it's like, whoa, hold on. What just happened?
Especially when you drop a type A alpha inside of there who's like, let me optimize this process. It sucks. And they're like, shut up, go home or go back to work.
Absolutely.
So I get it. So when you went from Alexandria, what did you do after that? You went to shore duty.
I taught there at the submarine school in Groton, Connecticut.
What was that? Was it like
taught the basic? So taught the officers basic and then the advanced course.
Is that where their best is at for officers?
So so basically that's where so before you go to your first boat as a junior officer, you go through the SOBIC course. It's the basic submarine officer basic course. Then they have the SOAC course, submarine officer advanced course.
How long is that? How long is each one of those?
So SOBIC I think it's like the 8 weeks, and then the advanced is like 3-4 months.
Is it hard?
So it got harder. I was actually there. So the Hartford collision happened. So 2000.
Was that outside of Hawaii?
So, they got run over in the Persian Gulf.
Okay.
And they were at periscope depth and they got hit. And so there was a big investigation and a lot of things changed, including evaluating the curriculum at those schools. So I was there for the curriculum development. So I got to lead the charge on, hey, how do we change the course? How do we make it better? And the advanced course for the department, I'm like, we made this harder. I'm like, people are going to fail. And the very first class that went through the new curriculum, we had one person fail. Like, to me, I felt bad for the guy, but I also felt like, all right, what we did was success, right? We made it difficult, that it's going to weed out the people.
Thank you for doing that.
They can't do that. So
that's the one thing I think when people ask me, like, what was it like to be in the submarine community? I say, I just feel like I was very lucky because I was around a lot of people that had a very high standard for things. Doesn't mean they're all very intelligent or smart. And there's a difference between, street smart and I guess, high aptitude intellectually when it comes to, book smart. But you're around a really unique hybrid. I mean, it is the island of misfit toys. I always say it, right? And you're going to find outliers of all kinds there. But the one thing that they all had a common thread on was, I think the one thing that would probably irritate most of them the most was any adoption of any form of mediocrity.
Yes.
Right? It was just like, why are we not raising the bar every time? Yep. Like, you've never arrived. And I think that that's one thing that really transcends well for us into this industry now. And I feel like it's an advantage in many ways.
And from transitioning, so my first job out of the Navy, I was working in the shipyards and doing things. But then when I came into this AE industry, right, getting into commissioning and doing this, everybody around you, it's very similar in that everyone's very smart. They're very good at the job. They're very motivated, and driven. So there's a lot of parallels there. Yeah. And so that attracted me. I liked that. Whereas like, hey, you have to perform. You have to match other, you're going to always find somebody, I think, that's going to, hey, that exceeds your excitement, that you could achieve, that you could strive to be, more like, and say, hey, that guy's got something. I want some of that. I want to be more like that.
There was always all-stars I had.
So, and especially in the submarine force, you have just really smart people all around you, and there's constant, and you're all in it together. And so we're all, it's all about being collaborative and supportive and helpful. And there was a lot of that there for me. And I appreciate it. And then what I really enjoyed was then once I became that senior person is repaying the help that I got, and then turning around and helping other people and saying, hey, you need to work on this, like, I'm going to help you, or seeing that, like, this guy's got a ton of potential. I want to help foster that and make sure that they don't succumb to some of the bad leadership and bad culture, and try to help support them and become as successful as I could be, or even more. Right. And, as a leader, I wanted to see people being more successful than I could possibly be. Cause I love that teaching and mentoring, right? Going all the way back to when I was a Boy Scout, right? Teaching a kid how to light a fire, that's I've done that later in life, and helping out when I was in the Navy. I helped out with Boy Scout troops in Hawaii and got to help teach kids how to start a fire with one match. And they're like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, let me show you. Like, let's talk about it. Let's show you different ways to do it, not just one way. And then and that whole aspect of teaching people too is really keen to me. You can't teach everybody the same way. You really have to get to know people, and whether it's submarine force, data centers, it's Boy Scouts, it doesn't matter. We're all just people trying to get things done, and learning how people tick, and getting really big philosophical here, but like those are the things that make me tick, and we start with why. Simon Sinek's books, finding people's why. I'm really passionate about that kind of stuff, and understanding emotional intelligence, and I think that's one thing that's super important in the submarine force, where you're just around people nonstop, right? But you have that military aspect, and then in the data center industry, and just any industry, the importance of that emotional intelligence, how you talk to people, the chemical process that happens when you say someone's name. They say, "Hi, Kirk, how you doing?" Right? When you say that person's name, there's a chemical reaction that happens in their brain that makes them feel good. If you've ever had a leader that does that and says that, like, they say people's names all the time, and they'll say it twice. They say it the first time they meet you. They say you're walking out the door. Then there's some people that, like, they're not very good at names, or, they'll write it down if they there's some people that don't go that extra mile to really make that very intentional. And I appreciate that now through research and readings and things that I've done, is that when people do go out the way to know your name, know your kid's name, know your wife's name, I think that stuff's very important. And now I understand it now, why certain leaders in the past were certain ways. And I think that's awesome. And I think everyone should, strive. You can become a better leader by reading and learning and studying, but having conversations with people like, hey, what works for you? So there's a lot of stuff out there where people can, learn to become better leaders. You can do it via reading, but then you have to then put that practical application in and execute it and practice it.
So where did you get that from?
So I was at the Air Command and Staff College after my department head tour.
Yeah, man, we're all over the place. Let me back it up. So you went to shore duty where you were actually you had the opportunity because of a catastrophic event that happened in the Navy. I don't think anybody died on the Hartford.
No.
Okay.
No.
So, but you were at ground zero and had the opportunity to lift the bar, raise the standard on what it is that you were teaching the officers.
On that
How long was
curriculum.
That? How long was that?
So I was there for about 2.5 years.
So at that, like I know the schools that I went through, and I know that they were trying to make it very, it was really good at getting you ready to be on that boat, right? Mm-hmm. But they weren't teaching us like necessarily leadership. Like they were like, you guys got to go be a part of the cog, and then you better hope that there's a chief or somebody. You have an ecosystem of those people. Could be first class, whatever. But those people that are going to be blocking and tackling for you and showing you a path to go through to develop it. And that's when you started getting good enough at your job as a subject matter expert. Then they started introducing you to other unique things to teach you. Such as leadership. Yeah. And I'm a huge Seneca fan like you. He had actually a really profound impact on me years ago when I first stumbled onto some of those TED Talks. And then, infinite. I've read everything he has, I think. But I will tell you, you're right. I think that there is those people that show that they are committed enough to understand your name or know your name. They're identifying you as significant, right? And that's what I think, really get triggered from. I had leaders that had that. So that's, I guess, my questions. One of my questions would be, did they teach you guys at the school? Or was it just that we, like those types of people tended to gravitate more towards that role and were more successful as a byproduct of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that gravitate towards that and just kind of figure it out naturally. And some people it does come naturally. Some people you have to work at it. And the leadership I remember in the Navy was they do the what's the Meigs-Bryer or whatever.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs tests and help you figure that stuff out. But you don't really dive deep into it. A lot of technical training through the schools. But the leadership, it's like 1 week we're going to talk about, are you an ENTJ or what is it that you are and what does that mean? And we talk about it for a few days, then you move on.
But it sounds like more your Eagle Scout, troop leader or whatever, and whoever you had as your department head when you were a JMO or a senior JMO or whoever, maybe a division officer or whatever. But when you got to that point where you were teaching future division officers, is that the band of, the people that you were teaching to get onto the submarine, these were like ensigns going into the fleet? I
mostly dealt with there was the ensigns getting ready to go to their first submarine.
Got it.
I helped teach the rules of the road and some navigation courses. Got it. But my larger role was to help teach some of the courses for the SOAC course, the advanced course. So the guys that had already done their first tour, getting ready to go to be a department head. And so I hadn't even gone through, I'm teaching the course, and at some point to be a department, I have to go through that course. So it was really unique.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it made it really easy for me when I had to go through the course since I wrote half the tests. But so it's unique the way that is set up. But we're there and become experts, subject matter experts in whatever we're trying to teach, and you get passed down by the senior instructors that are already there, and you get up to speed. So I ran a lot of the trainers, and then I taught some of the advanced courses with and I got to teach. They brought in a retired submarine captain that came in and as a civilian, as like a contractor to help mentor as well, and I worked with him, and so I got a lot of leadership. It was great. Yeah,
those guys have a lot of
ton of experience.
Because they were skippers during the Cold War, right? Oh, yeah. So they lived in a different environment altogether.
And they'd pull pranks on me and things like that. And and we'd pull pranks on each other. And
good.
It's good times.
I'm glad to see that still exists. And then you went from that shore duty, you went to the Corpus?
Then I went through that submarine advanced course and then went to the Corpus Christi as the engineer. But in between there is when the whole Memphis opportunity came.
Jeez, I didn't even realize until today that we both shared. You were on the Memphis at a certain point.
I did the very last deployment. It was a surge deployment on the Memphis in 2011, 2012. Yeah, beginning of 2012.
Was it a good boat
2011.
Then?
It was a great boat. They had a lot of struggles, a lot of issues, and I think there were some senior leadership issues, and the CO was fired. And, I'd heard all the kind of the issues they had. I got down there. I'm like, these guys are really good. They're really operational. And they brought in a new captain who was, just to try and execute the last 3-4 months of that boat. And that boat had been very operational over the last 3-4 years prior to that. There were some amazing guys. There were some culture issues, but I think some of those got fixed and people got fired, and those people went away. But yeah, it was one of the most fun I've ever had on a submarine. It was those 3-4 months of being on deployment. We deployed to the Med and back. I ended up doing just a bunch of exercises and got to spend a lot of time in pulling into Rota.
Sure.
Pulling there a few times and went to Sevilla and all that. That
Sure.
was amazing and a good time. But
I did 3 deployments on the Memphis and had 2 captains, 2 XOs. I don't know what it was, but that boat had a lot of talent. It had a lot of studs, and I didn't know any better. Like, I was having a conversation with one of my kids the other day. I'm like, you won't know what a good boss looks like until you've had a bad one, right? And for me, I came right out of the training, went right to the fleet, and it was coming right out of the shipyard. Memphis was coming out of the shipyard, and I got to do sea trials. I did everything with that boat, and I did the first 3 deployments when it came out of the shipyard.
Awesome.
And I tell you, I didn't know any better. I just assumed every submarine had this caliber of amazing people. And I'll tell you, I learned what a really amazing culture is capable of doing, or the value of having a strong culture. That's where I learned it. It wasn't, in the resting room, and all those things matter too on the team perspective from a competitive perspective. But here, we were literally trusting each other with each other's lives, right? And we were deployed, 288 days a year on average, which was great, right? And I didn't go on a ship to sit at port. I wanted to be gone, right? I wanted to be doing stuff. I wanted to be significant. I wanted to have, something that would be cool.
Yeah.
I worked with amazing people. It wasn't until later that I got out and I realized, man, I just think everybody has cultures like that. And then I discovered that that's not the case.
No, and each submarine's its own microculture. I mean, and it rides ways with the military. You got guys that are constantly rotating in and out. And so that culture, is only going to last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
It could get better. It could get worse. And it's going to get better and worse. And, somebody once said to me, you're always getting better or getting worse. You're never staying the same.
Yeah, it's true.
And that
it's like a battery.
And that applies to culture.
Yeah.
So the culture is going to go up and go down. And when enough of the people that carry that good culture go away, and then someone comes in and then affects that culture in a negative way, and then it builds and builds and builds, you're far enough removed from that good culture. And that happens. It's cyclical in submarines especially, and it's cyclical in the civilian industry as well. As people change jobs and people come and people go, the culture can move. But I think it's a much more fluid and dynamic in any military organization where you constantly have that influx, because you could have somebody who's just going to have an immense presence, an immense culture, but that person's leaving at some point. So can that person imprint their culture on enough people there to keep it going? And that happens at times, but over time, it eventually does fade away. You get far enough removed from it, and that culture that was there 10 years ago will not exist 10 years later, because you've had enough people changing throughout the company, throughout that organization. It could be better or worse, but it's just going to be different.
Well, hopefully they're mentoring those people on how to carry the torch. And
that's something I think, that it's not stressed enough. Like, hey, we realize you got to recognize you got something good going, and how do you make that culture a legacy? How do you make it last?
I've only read books, submarine books about, turn your ship around. There's a lot of things out there that they talk about where they didn't really change a lot of processes. They were just, they were distributing power. Does that make sense? Like unleashing people to be leaders without needing to have everybody else's oversight. And I felt that trust that those leaders were putting into the rest of the team was what really gave them the confidence to be successful. So we never had any incidents. We had amazing deployments. Yeah. What did you go on to next?
So I did my department head tour in Hawaii, and that was a whole...
So you went from Groton for shore duty and sea duty to...
6 years, and then went to Hawaii.
Did you want to be in Hawaii?
Yeah, that was part of I was looking forward to... I was single, and I was like, that was part of my deal with Memphis. I'm like, I'd like to live in Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii, and that was part of my deal of going to serve in the Memphis, was to go to Hawaii. And so I got the deal to go to Hawaii. Then I ended up on a boat that was in the shipyard. It was stationed in Guam and just shifted home port from Guam to Hawaii. and it was doing its last availability before it decommed a few years later. Complete 180 from my first submarine experience, like because it was not operational. It was in the shipyards
in Guam or in Hawaii.
It was in Hawaii in the shipyard, but a lot of issues. The boat was pretty run down. It was an old submarine, and they had spent a lot of time in Guam. So you're not doing as much maintenance in Guam because you're so far remote. And then I call it the Guamisms. Getting rid of the Guamisms was the most challenging thing I ever faced as a leader.
And you were a department head?
Department was the engineer, so third highest in command. With just the captain XO above me, and had a lot of struggles. I saw my captain XO in tears at times
from
the stress of the job.
Really?
Yeah.
Anything in particular? Unrealistic expectations? Just Cobb, they couldn't get the crew in line?
We just kept having issues, and without getting into details, it was just a tough culture, and it was a tough culture to break and try and so we became that boat, right? We were the problem child, right? We had problems.
It's always one of those.
And once you become that, and it was just one thing that happened after another, and it's frustrating.
Did you ever take that ship to sea?
Yes, okay. We eventually got to sea and got to where we needed to be, and we did a deployment. That had a lot of material issues on deployment as well, and
like a Westpac,
yeah, we did a Westpac, but we pulled into Japan just before Christmas. Spent a month there. Spent 4 full weeks because we'd fix one thing, then the next thing would break. We'd fix that, and then another thing would break, all in series. It was never in parallel, so it was constantly be ready to spin up to get underway in a day or two, and then it'd be another week.
Sure.
And then we broke down a couple more times. Had to go to Guam, so we didn't get any cool port calls, but. I did get to go snowboarding in Japan and do some scuba diving at Guam. So
that'd be kind of cool.
So it was
not a bad consolation.
Absolutely. I was still able to get some fun in.
And then after that, what'd you head off to?
And then I spent a year in Montgomery, Alabama at the Air Command and Staff College.
And are you lieutenant commander now? Or?
Yeah, I was lieutenant commander there.
As the XO, you were probably. Okay.
So I was the engineer. Yeah.
Yep.
So I did that, and then got to go play Air Force for a year. To live in an Air Force base for a year.
How did you pick that? I mean, that seems pretty random coming from the fleet.
Well, that was it. So the Navy has the Navy War College in Rhode Island, and each, and then the Army's in Leavenworth. So, and then they'll do like an exchange program type deal. So there was maybe 20 different classes, and each class had one Navy guy. So there was like 3 submarine guys, bunch of pilots, and
what was that like? Guys sitting around with all these pilots that probably thought that they were the smartest.
The interesting too, every class had 2 international officers as well.
Wow.
So our class had somebody
like Germany or
everywhere. Yeah. So our class had somebody from Taiwan, which was interesting. I think it was the first year they had someone from Taiwan, and then Slovakia.
No kidding.
So it was really unique. And the Taiwanese officer, he wouldn't wear his dress uniform. He'd wear his like flight suit, but he never wore his dress uniform. They'd list all the countries. But Taiwan was listed, but never a flag, right? So the whole geopolitical China, Taiwan thing.
Oh, God.
The way that all portrayed, it was very interesting. So I wasn't going to tell any sea stories about my last deployment in the,
for sure.
Pacific. So the one thing that stuck out with me, Taiwan, given the recent events, what's going on in Ukraine and everything, and well, what's next in Taiwan, So Taiwan is, it's democratic. It's not communist. But there are people in Taiwan, they either see themselves as Taiwanese and democratic, or they see themselves as Chinese and communist. So he was explaining to us that culture, that there's these 2 different cultures there. And someone asked him, well, what do you see yourself as? And he's like, I see myself as Chinese and communist. I was like, whoa. Okay.
I wonder if that's like the correct answer, because it has to be the correct answer, or if that's really how you
I don't know. I mean, really nice guy. He's got wife, kids, and everybody there. But just to get that perspective from somebody else in the military and what he's doing, and it was unique.
So then how long was that school?
That was a year.
And then, so you're on an Air Force base?
Yeah, lived on base, and it was, crappy old housing from like the 1910s or whatever.
I was born and raised in those Air Force bases, man.
Yeah, but it was fun and nice community, and all every Friday night we'd have whiskey and cigars on my front porch with the guys that lived around me and
tell sea stories.
So yeah, just have a good time. It was fun. So, and the best part, I took the German elective there, and it was like an experimental thing. They're offering a year-long German elective class, and we read a lot of books and wrote a lot of papers. But the German elective, I took 4 years in high school, but I got full immersion there, taking language training 3 days a week. Excuse me. And then 1 day a week, we'd spend a couple hours talking about German culture where we didn't have to speak in German, but we would talk about articles and research and write papers and discuss different topics. So, and then that included a nice little 19-day boondoggle over spring break in Germany where we got
Did you get to ride like a U-boat?
Didn't get to ride a submarine or anything like that, but we, because I was the only Navy guy. There was a bunch of Air Force, there's me and one other Navy guy, but then it was mostly Air Force people that were in the class. So we, the end of our trip, we went up to Kiel, which is up in the north, and got to see where they have their minesweepers, and we got to see some submarines in dry dock, and it's a really neat experience. We got to start in Munich. We actually went to Vienna, spent some time in Austria, staying in these old like World War II style barracks, and you got these World War II style structures
a lot of history
that are still there and everything. That was really cool. Spent 3 days in Vienna.
We did. We were on a med run in '97, and we did some NATO ops, and we had your U-boats with us, and we got to, you play games with them before you guys go on station together, just to make sure that you understand how to function. And they're diesel boats, right? We were counter detecting them pretty far out, right? So we always thought that we'd be the ones most vulnerable with, our reactor coolant pumps running at a high frequency.
They don't have the technology that we do, though, yeah.
But I'll tell you, so you went from there then into what? What did you do after that?
Spent a year there, and then I spent the rest of my time in Norfolk. Went to the Carrier Strike Group.
What made you leave the submarine community?
So there's a billet for a submarine officer there. There was another submarine officer there that was like the operations officer. So as a Carrier Strike Group, you operate with ASW assets. So you need a submarine guy on the staff to know how to speak submarine, right? Because you're going to operate with submarines in your group. You also you're hunting other submarines using helicopters and ships and things like that too. So having that submarine background on the admiral's staff is what I was doing.
Now, was that because originally you said, hey, I could see myself as a captain. All these things that you were doing throughout your career, were they to stay on that track to become?
At this point, no. At this point.
Because I'm like, once you leave the fleet, you're not.
I originally had orders to go to Naples and be an operation engineer for the squadron there. But, long story short, without getting into it, plans changed and decided I was going to, get out.
I got you.
So I finished up the rest of my time and got out. So, and then I had one kid and had a second on the way. And
when did you get out? What year?
So that was 2017.
And then in 2017, what did you do? You wanted to go back to Illinois?
No, it was, so I got out and we were having our second child and said, so it's either go back to Illinois and Chicago area where we've got family support or just stay here in Virginia. So I, stayed in Virginia. We went to work in the shipyards. It was an easy transition, right?
Sure.
So went and did that and spent 2 years, working on submarines in the shipyard and started doing really well as a project manager and making a name for myself and was having a good time doing it. But I knew I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. I needed to break away from that identity and form something new for myself, a new challenge, right? I've overcome the challenge of working on submarines. I got it, been there, done that, needed something new to challenge me.
So how did you go from the shipyard post-retirement, to HDR?
Actually a Navy, somebody I knew in the Navy when I was in Hawaii I knew he was living in the Chicago area and I was just curious what he was doing and because he was traveling and I just reached out and said, because I was like, I'm coming home soon for my brother's wedding. What are you up to? What do you do? And he was just curious what he did for a job and he's telling me about commissioning and he was working for Siska Hennessy Group at the time and he's like, actually, I could use some help. I go, yeah, well, I'm going to be home in like a month or so. And he's like, yeah, why don't you come in and we'll talk? And I'm like, yeah, sure. It's worth just having a listen and learn something new. What exactly do they do? What is commissioning?
Siska's a big shop, right? So
yeah, about 500-600 people.
Yeah.
And he had really good offices in Chicago. And I sat down and talked to him and pretty much it was a job interview. And I said, well, when are you looking for someone to start? And he was like, oh, can you start Monday? And I was like, whoa, wow, okay. But so I needed some time to transition and move my family. So I took the job, and about 2 months later, I'm back in Chicago, and working for Siska Hennessy doing commissioning. And then So not just data centers, but we were working on hospitals and office buildings and whatever we could commission, we were doing it. But with the focus on building a data center commissioning team. So, because I guess in the past they had a data center commissioning team, and it kind of dwindled away, and they're trying to build it back up and then as the data center boom, if you will, happened in 2020, it was as we entered COVID and everything. So that was a unique time, right? So I'm trying to learn the industry, and then I just moved back home, and then
so that's in like
COVID shuts the world down.
I was like, so in 2019 or early.
So it was like November 2019 is when I started.
Okay,
and then
a few months later is when COVID hit.
And COVID,
were you in an office? Were you reporting to the office back then?
Yeah, I was working in the office, but it was I'd work from home every now and then, just like because I'm in the field doing something, but then maybe I'd work in the office on Friday or something like that. But for the most part, I was still learning, still working in the office. And then when COVID happened and everything went remote, and yeah.
When did you decide that you wanted to become a data center specialist? Or did you?
I just doing my own research and seeing, like, I wanted to find something, I wasn't sure what that was. And then when I realized what a data center is, right? It's a giant building that you can't lose power, right? Submarine.
Yep.
It's like a giant building, you can't lose power, right? Of course. And I saw the parallels in how, like, okay, I understand the concept. I can do that. I like it. It's challenging and it's booming. It's growing. Doing my own research, reading about everything. I said, no, this is something I could do the rest of my career. I could make it data centers. And so I made that commitment that, like, yep, I found it. This is what I'm going to do. I want to invest the rest of my career in and around data centers. One, it's challenging. Two, obviously the financial rewards. Is it financially make sense to reap the rewards, right?
Sure.
So sometimes decisions revolve around money, but it's not just for the money. I wanted the challenge, right? I wanted to fulfill my purpose.
Oh, allowed you to go back home. Exactly. It seems like a lot of boxes checked. It's exactly. A big name. So how long were you at Cisco?
So I was at Cisco for almost 2 years.
And then
I found the opportunity with HDR.
So how did that happen?
So, there was there's certainly some culture challenges that I was identified when I was at Cisco that I wasn't happy with. And then, my LinkedIn inbox starts getting beat up too, of like people asking, looking for people. And I said, well, let's get out there and look. Let's see what is out there. I felt like I've only got like 2 years experience in doing this kind of stuff. But, I was out, my boss had left about 9 months after I'd gotten there. And so then I kind of stepped up and elevated and took charge. And all right, here I am now. I'm trying to help run the show and help build the team. And I needed help. I was asking for help here and there, and it just wasn't quite getting the help I needed. And found the opportunity with HDR. It sounded like, what I'm trying to do here is exactly what they need over here, and they've got a ton of support. And so I really was gravitated towards the leadership there and the amount of support I was going to have, and it's been everything I thought it would, and then some. So yeah, it's amazing people. My boss is technically out of London, who manages our commissioning globally, and he's awesome.
How big is HDR?
Over 11,000 employees.
Okay, so they're
a big firm.
No kidding.
But we're starting from scratch, trying to build a commissioning team here in North America. And so in 3 years, I went from not being in the industry to leading the data center commissioning team for all of North America for a major company. So
you were an chief engineer on a fast attack submarine. That's exactly. Too big of a reach for me to understand that.
And I've realized too, now it's like, what mission critical experience do I have? Well, I've only been in the data center industry for maybe 3 years, but you want to talk about mission critical experience. Talk about operating a nuclear submarine under the ice, right?
Yeah.
And around the world, managing those people and managing the maintenance and managing the availabilities. And that doesn't get much more mission critical than that. Right?
So if you were going back, and the reason why we do this podcast, right, is we love hearing stories and we want to share as many stories as we can. Obviously this week I'm focused heavy on veterans. I've released a couple podcasts just recently with a couple of the business partners that started Overwatch with me. Both former Army guys. They have a completely different, one was an officer, one was enlisted. Both were infantry. The officer had an enlisted background, so he kind of speaks both sides and understands or empathizes, I guess, for both challenges that come with both career fields. Yeah. But, my speech today at Data Center World was really focused on, veterans. And my hope was I stumbled into this industry by accident and then just kind of like you, had a critical questioning attitude and just kind of kept trying to figure out how I can evolve and grow. And I've learned that this space really rewards those that have that appetite.
Absolutely.
And as long as you're willing to work hard, that there's a lot of opportunity, right? So for me, I wish that there was a roadmap or a podcast that I could have listened to back in those days that said, hey, listen, I mean, this isn't the biggest megaphone in the world, but hopefully it reaches a few folks that otherwise would have never learned about the data center industry. Yeah. And I've had civilians on here as well that have amazing stories and how they kind of stumbled into it and just kind of grew through the ranks. And now, this week with the big presence and the big push on the veteran stuff that we're doing for Data Center World, I wanted to scoop you up and see if you could come in here and talk about that, because the objective would be to find that narrative or find that message that we could share with someone else that would have been impactful for us. Like if there was a roadmap for you or a roadmap for me, perhaps we would have gotten here faster and been able to contribute or bring more value to the space faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for you, now knowing what you know, and obviously you heard me speak and you stand, I would imagine you understand my positioning on certain things. What would be the message that you would share with anybody that's listening to your story that, grew up in some small town and didn't really know what to do and decided to, enlist or do something else, that they didn't take a traditional route. They took their own way. And then they discovered that as long as they kept putting themselves in a situation in which they had to be challenged all the time, that, the pressure testing actually helped propel you forward, right? So what would be your message for those people that are listening that aren't even sure of what they want to do when they get out? They just know that they're ready for the next chapter.
No matter what you do, if it's something you don't want a career, a job, you don't want to be doing that, you still got to understand who you are, right? Still just be you. Be true to the way your work ethic, the way you communicate to people, the way you treat other people. Those skills, no matter what company you work for, what industry you work in, those are all translatable skills, right? Take those skills and work your tail off and be a good person and be a good leader and get that work ethic to just, all right, this is my job today. I'm going to figure out how to be the best person at fill in the blank today, and I'm going to do everything I can to do this job to my standards, or above, and trying establishing that culture. So no matter what, and that's just me. I just know how to be me, no matter what I'm doing, right? And it's whether I was on a submarine and working in the shipyards or working in a data center. I'm just, I work my tail off and I be myself. So if you're driven and want to work hard, and the benefits will come. Things will come if you keep driving and keep that work ethic. And then you eventually will find yourself in a place where you're working for the company that you feel like you could work for the rest of your life, or you're working in the industry that you can work for the rest of your life. And you've been practicing all these skills all along. And then they will carry you through the rest of your career and get you to where you want to go. So
you said something, though, that I wanted to make sure that we recovered. I asked you why you went to go work for HDR, and you said the leadership, the vision of that leadership.
Absolutely.
So now knowing that's what I don't think anybody coming out of the military looks at the first place they're going to go to as the final destination. Yeah. Typically, it's like, this seems like a comfortable place that I could go to until I figure out what I want to do when I kind of grow up, when I figure it out more. And some people don't see it like that, but that's still probably the case for them as well, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell those people to look for, as they're transitioning out? What would you tell them to look for? We've had resumes from veterans that are getting out in the next 30, 60, 90 days, and we reach out to them and they're like, I have like 4 offers. I'm just trying to figure out which one's the highest, and then I'm going to do whatever. And I'm like, hey, that's great, because I've taken jobs for money instead of fulfillment or joy or inspiration or job security of any kind. Yeah. I just did it because it seemed like, hey, the more money I make, the less shit I have to eat, so it seems like a pretty good opportunity. But what would you now go back and tell people to look for when they don't know what they don't know?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is looking for the fit. You got to find what fits you. What fits me is not going to fit you, right? I got 3 young kids, right? It's got to fit for my family. It's got to fit me, which means it's got to fit my family. It's got to fit my wife, right? And so, and that's not, that might it depends on everybody, right? We're back in Chicago. Part of the reason I did that is because we have the family support. So I can go to a conference for a week and know that my family's still I've got tons of help in the area, right? So this job works for me but it works being in the Chicago area because I have all the family support. And that was one of the prime drivers to taking the job and coming back to Chicago. So, but it's you've really got to know a company. You've got to do a deep dive. You got to read their website. What are they about? Ask the question, who am I going to work for? You may report directly to somebody, but is that the person you're going to work with every day? I've always asked in my interviews that I've had for jobs is, what's the culture like?
Yeah.
What's the subculture like within your team, right? There might be an overall certain type of culture, but I want to know the culture of the team I'm going to work with. Sure. Who am I talking to every day? Who am I actually working for on a functional level? And what is that culture like?
Well, why did you always focus on that?
Because at the end of the day, it's people right? It's whether you're building submarines or you're building a data center. It's not the steel. It's not the servers. It's not the cables. It's the people, right? So no matter what you're doing, it's all about the people. And that is the most important asset that any company has. And that is the most, it's trust. We deal in the currency of trust when you're dealing with people. I want to trust the person that I'm working with. I want to trust that, hey, working as a team, this is the ultimate goal. I need this deliverable. I want to trust that I'm going to get that deliverable. Or I trust that person that they're going to tell me ahead of time that I can't get you what you need. I need help. Sometimes that's the biggest thing, is being able to say I need help, and then or figuring out how to go get help so you can still deliver something on time. So I really think it's all about people, and it's about trust within that organization. Trust means different things, but in a professional relationship working for a company, hey, when they may not have all the answers, but you want to trust that when you say you need help, or you say I want to try and execute this and make this happen, that you're gonna have the support.
Yeah.
And then when sometimes things don't always work out, but as long as the trust is there and you just enjoy seeing that person's face, or you enjoy getting the emails from them and looking forward to working towards a common path with somebody, that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
Is just enjoying somebody's time, working with somebody, enjoying talking with them, and not dreading getting on a call, not dreading opening this email from this person, right? I don't want to work around that kind of stuff.
So I agree 100%. I give a lot of credit to Claude Barron and Mark Breer, who were my two captains. And they were exceptional at what they did. And it's not because I had a great relationship with them. I think I stood tall in front of each one of them at least once, probably, right? But they were always very transparent in the way that they, rolled out their expectations to us. And they did not tolerate, mediocrity. Mm-hmm. And when I was a young junior sailor at that age, you don't have that. You need that. And sometimes you need a chief or someone else to kind of remind you of those things. For me, they kind of ruined me, those two captains, and my department heads were awesome as well. And it's because I left the military and I expected and demanded a very high level of trust and respect from the people that I worked for. And I always did, so I had the chance to go kind of change and reinvent myself every few years in this space. And every time, like you, I would always ask, who's going to put their fingerprint on me? Mm-hmm. Who's going to be mentoring me or coaching me? And do they have something that could help develop me and grow? I never really cared who my boss was, but they had to be able to teach me. They had to be able to coach me, and they had to be willing to develop, me. And, it's my responsibility to show them that the capability or the talent was there, but I needed them to invest into helping me grow because I couldn't do it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. In my interview for HDR, I direct, like I said, I look forward to mentoring people, but I also expect to be mentored.
Sure.
Right. So, and communicating that. So absolutely, seeking out that mentorship is huge.
Awesome.
And wanting to be mentored, right. And understanding what that means. And sometimes it takes sacrifices, and it takes a lot of internal willpower to force that mentorship onto yourself, right? You have to seek it out sometimes. It's not always going to be there to be given to you. Like getting mentored, it takes a lot of work on the mentee to pull for it.
Sure.
And you pull hard enough for it, and you'll get it. And you just got to find that right person, though. That's, you said, can imprint that fingerprint on you to help you get to where you need to go. So
yeah, I think, it's data center week right now, and everyone's downtown, so we'll shoot back down there in just a little bit and bring this on home. But as we were talking, it triggered. You reached out to me a few months ago because I did a podcast with. I
think it was the Data Center Hawk.
Data Center Hawk or Data Center Frontier. Either way, both those guys are fantastic, and they gave me an opportunity to talk about what we're trying to get accomplished here with Overwatch. And we really have a lot of passion, obviously, for the mission critical vertical, and always have. But also, we do feel like it's our purpose or our mission to help bring on as much talent as we can from the veteran community, knowing that there's such a huge blind spot in this space.
And the talent's there.
The talent is coming out. And I think that on one of those podcasts, I probably mentioned that I was on the Memphis, and I think that you shot me a note and said, hey, I was also on the Memphis maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, I think you said you were on the Memphis. Or I think you had you're something in the background too.
Yeah,
on the back of your wall in your office or something.
Yeah,
and I saw the Memphis, and so yeah, I made that connection, and then just the way you were speaking about your story and how you got to be where you're at, it was just like, oh well, I need to meet this guy. Like we have very similar, energy and mentality, focus, drive. Like, yeah, I need to get in front of him, and here we are.
Man, so listen. I'm glad you reached out, and I'm glad that we finally got a chance to connect this morning for the first time, right? But before I shut her down, was there any cool sea stories or anything like that you wanted to share? I mean, the MacGyver story is gonna be pretty tough one to beat.
The MacGyver story is pretty cool. Memphis sea story. We're in Rota, Spain. We've all got some euros left on us, and we just want to spend it because we're not going to go exchange it anywhere. Otherwise, it becomes, monopoly money back home or something for us, right? So we all pitched in, and we're sitting there in this market, and we bought a pig's leg, like a whole brined pig leg with the hoof and all, right? Like they usually shave it like prosciutto, real thin, right? So I don't know how much. It was maybe like $200-300. We bought this whole pig leg, brought it back to the boat. And thinking the captain's going to be upset or whatever. I mean, cause this is the last deployment, last underway of the Memphis. But we bring it back to the boat. Captain thought it was awesome. We hang it up in the wardroom, and just over the next week or so, we're just taking our pocket knives and hacking away at this thing. The doc was not happy or pleased with us, because in the U.S. it doesn't have the hoofs and still attached. This thing still had the hoof attached and everything. So it was kind of gross, but it was kind of cool. And we just hacked away at that thing, and then. We decided we were done with it, and we went to the captain. We said, "Captain, we're ready. Can we request to surface the ship to throw the pig leg overboard?" So we surfaced the ship, and just to throw the pig leg overboard. And we even announced it over the 1MC, pig leg departing.
Yeah, that's funny.
We did that and chucked that into the ocean and went back submerged and went back on our way.
Man, some of my greatest memories were being a junior sailor on the Memphis, and there's a guy that. Did you say you reached out to, I think it's James Tolliver. I only knew him as Commander Tolliver at the time. So it's so funny because he's in this space now too. I think he's at Google and he's kicking ass, but I got to serve with him, and there's a few other guys in this space that I've ran around into that I served with, and it's a small world, man. But I have some amazing stories. Like I'm one of those guys that left the military that was super happy and loved what I did. And then I spent the rest of my time trying to go to a business to where I was growing myself, but trying to reclaim that culture that we had so that I can maximize the level of productivity that I could do, right? Because I knew that I was at a higher level, even as a junior sailor, being around an environment that really rewarded your courage, right? We were pushed to do whatever we felt we could do, right? There was no limitations. So now that's all that we try to do with our current culture is try to unleash people, right? So decentralized command, totally where, we have department heads and those guys get to run the ship the way that they need to. And they just kind of tell me like, hey, this is what I intend to do. And I say, well, then go do it. Right. So you just want that leader mentality. Yeah. And that's what we were trying to create. And that's what the Memphis, I think, offered as well. But, hey, listen, I appreciate you making the time.
Absolutely, Kirk. This has been great.
This is awesome.
It's great to catch up and great just to get to know you more. And so, and is, like I said, I'm trying to still establish myself as a lead. I see myself as becoming a leader in the industry, right? I don't want to just go commission some data centers. Like, I really want to. The industry has a problem, right? It's a leadership problem. It's a people problem, right? We can't. The industry is growing faster than we can put people into it to get the experience, and it's going to take good leaders to grow people into this industry, and I want to be a part of that.
Me too. We want to help contribute as much as we can. So if HDR needs anybody, we'll help you find some veterans.
Absolutely.
So to that end, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. I hope that our listeners enjoyed your story, and
absolutely.
I hope that this podcast makes it into the ear holes of a few different folks that hopefully one day you discover that, hey, I could in 3 years be on my way to be a leader in this industry and thought of as an identity, a thought leader in commissioning or whatever it is.
Whatever it is. There's so many opportunities within just the data centers than commissioning that you can get into.
I agree.
And you just gotta find your own path. And if it's something that excites you, there's enough people in the industry that will help mentor you to get there. But you got to go find those mentors by going to conferences or sitting on LinkedIn for 3 hours and finding people. And, and that's how I found you, just going through LinkedIn, and I said, oh, I can connect with this guy and I can learn something from him. I don't know what, but I know I'll learn something. Right?
Well, you were wrong. So no, man, it's a pleasure to speak with you. And it was great to find you. So thanks again, Alan. Appreciate it.